your ability to do well over the next 1 year or 5 years is going to have no role whatsoever on your lifetime ability to generate wealth. So rather than going out of your way to be like, here's what I think is going to happen in crypto, here's what I think is going to happen in the stock market, just make sure that you have a big enough buffer in your finances. I mean, think about the biggest risks to the US economy over the last 2 generations. The others would be Pearl Harbor, 9/11, COVID, and maybe Lehman Brothers couldn't find a buyer in 2008, which sparked the financial crisis of 2008. Those are the biggest risks by far. And the common denominator of every one of those stories is risk is what's left over when you think you've thought of everything. I mean, think about the biggest risks to the US economy over the last 2 generations.
COVID?
I mean, that's one of them. The others would be Pearl Harbor, 9/11, COVID, and maybe Lehman Brothers couldn't find a buyer in 2008, which sparked the financial crisis of 2008. Those are the biggest risks by far. And the common denominator of every one of those stories is that nobody saw them coming. They were not in any newspaper before they happened. They were not in any economic outlook. Nobody was going on TV warning you that this was coming. The common denominator of those is that they did all of their damage in 2 seconds. And that would be the case going forward. You can guarantee that the biggest news story and the biggest risk over the next year or the next 10 years of our life, whatever it is something that nobody's talking about today, that you and I can't even fathom. Because it's always been like that. There's never been a time when the biggest news story was foreseeable. And it'll be like that going forward. So that's another just like embracing how fragile the world is. There's a great quote from a financial advisor who I really admire named Carl Richards. And he says, risk is what's left over when you think you've thought of everything.
If risk is what I don't see, how do I prepare?
There's another great quote from Nassim Taleb that I like, where he says, invest in preparedness, not in prediction. So rather than going out of your way to be like, here's what I think is going to happen in crypto, here's what I think is going to happen in the stock market, just make sure that you have a big enough buffer in your finances, cash, liquidity, being scared of debt, so that no matter what happens, you at least have a fighting chance of enduring it and making through. One thing I've often thought about is that you should have enough cash in your investing portfolio. The amount of cash you should have should feel like it's too much. It should make you wince a little bit. Because if you only have enough cash to put up with the risks that you can envision and the risks that you can foresee, you're going to miss a surprise every single time. Every single surprise is going to be a surprise to you. But if you feel like you have too much cash, then at least you have a fighting chance of putting up with the 9/11, the COVID, the Pearl Harbor, whatever it might be. So when people look at my asset allocation, my investments, a lot of people look at it and say, you seem really conservative. Why do you have this much cash? What are you saving for? And my answer is always, I don't know. I have no idea what I'm saving for. Who are we to assume that we can predict the risks that are going to be in our own personal lives and throughout the broader world? Nobody can do it. The only way to prepare for it is to have what feels like too much safety.
What is your capital allocation strategy? How do you invest your money? This is the thing people want to know most about you.
I keep it as painfully simple as I possibly can. So literally my entire net worth is cash, a house, and index funds, and some shares of Markel where I'm on the board of directors. And that's it. There's nothing else. I can summarize everything so easily and so cleanly. And truly, that's it. And it's not even like I have 20 bank accounts. I have one bank account, one brokerage account, and a house, and that's it. It's so simple.
Why index funds? You're the reason your capital allocation strategy is almost identical to mine. I want to talk about the house thing as well, but after reading your book, I stopped trying to pick stocks.
Yeah.
And I invested all of my available capital into index funds outside of investing it in starting companies. So I'm a shareholder in, 50, 60, 70 companies. All my other available capital is invested in index funds. And then I have a very long-standing large position in Ethereum, which I've held for like 6 years or something.
Yeah.
Now, which has done me very well.
Yeah.
That is it. And the Ethereum investment is also based on the fact that I run a software business that is in blockchain. And I could see that developers are building on top of Ethereum more than any other blockchain. So that insight was really beneficial to me.
And 6 years, so even with the big fall over the last 2 years, you're still up a lot.
Yeah, I think your book taught me that successful investing is when you lose the password to your investment account.
Yes, that's exactly it.
I don't actually think you said that in there, but that's like, when I lose the password to my investment account, I'm so proud of myself.
Yeah.
Because it means I haven't checked it in forever. And so it was funny because you were coming today. I thought, oh yeah, well, I have all this money in these index funds. I'll check it. And I thought, fuck, I don't know the password.
Good. That's why you're going to do okay. The reason I do this, what's important is that I am not one of the people who says nobody can beat the market, so therefore use index funds. That's not what I believe. I think it's extremely hard to beat the market, and very few people will do it. But I think there are really smart people who can do it, and people who I know who I could invest with. The reason I don't is not because I don't believe it can be done. It's because the variable that I want to maximize for in my investments is endurance. If I can just earn average returns for an above average period of time, it's going to lead to an amount of success that will literally put you in the top 5% of investors. My parents are a great example of this. My parents are smart people, but they have no financial background. And they have like minimal financial interest, I would say. But they have dollar cost average into index funds for going on 40 years now. And literally, if you look at the returns, they've never sold anything ever. And literally, if you look at the returns, they'd probably be in the top 3% of professional investors.
For anyone that doesn't know, what is dollar cost averaging and what is an index fund?
Dollar cost averaging means you buy the same dollar amount of investments every single month, come hell or high water. Doesn't matter what the stock market's doing, recession, boom, bust, you say, I'm going to put $100 or whatever it is in the stock market on the first of every month. Now, most people who have a 401k at work are doing this whether they know it or not. They have $100 or whatever removed from every paycheck, and it goes into the funds that they own, and they don't have to do anything. Whether you know it or not, you're actually doing it. The contrast to that would say, I'm going to buy and sell based off of how I feel in the stock market. I wake up, I watch CNBC, I decided to sell, and I'm going to put it back in when I feel better about the market. It's the contrast to that. An index fund is just a single fund that owns hundreds or thousands of stocks within it. And if it's diverse enough, if it's big enough, really what you're doing is you're owning a slice of the global economy, which is how I think about it. It's thousands of individual stocks in there, Tesla, Apple, whatever it be. But really what you're doing is you're owning a slice of capitalism.
If I was your son and I said, Dad, prove to me that that's a better long-term wealth creation strategy than buying crypto or buying companies that I use or like, how would you explain that to your kid?
Your ability to do well over the next 1 year or 5 years is going to have no role whatsoever on your lifetime ability to generate wealth. All that's going to matter is not what are the best returns you can earn. All that matters is what are the returns that you can sustain for the longest period of time. All that matters is your endurance. It doesn't matter if you can double your money this year or even double your money again the next year. All that matters is, can you stick and keep it going for 50 years? That's where compounding comes from.
Prove it.
Because the formula for compounding is returns to the power of time. That's not quite it, but like more or less that's it. So in that equation, if you understand the math, all of the heavy lifting comes from the exponent.
Prove it.
Because that's how exponential growth works. That's how it works. It's literally exponential.
Give me a case study where someone has followed that strategy and done well.
Okay, here's one way to explain it that I use in the book. 99% of Warren Buffett's net worth was accumulated after his 60th birthday. After he turned 60 years old, 99% of his wealth has been accumulated after that period. Because the longer you hold that for, the crazier the numbers get. When he was 60, I think he was worth about $3 billion. A lot of money, he's a multi-billionaire. But now that he's 90, he's worth over $100 billion. And he's given like $100 billion away to charity. So if he didn't do that, he'd go from $3 billion to $200 billion since he's been 60. Because the numbers just get crazier at that point. He's worth $100 billion. So if his net worth goes up 10% in 1 year, he makes $10 billion, which is 3 times that he was worth when he was 60. So that's when you look at somebody like Buffett, is he a great investor? Is he a great stock picker? Of course. But the real secret to his success is that he's been a good investor for 80 years. And if he had retired at age 60 or at age 50, nobody would have ever heard of him. He would have been like one of the other multi-billionaires who lives in Florida and plays golf, and like you've never heard of him. The reason he's a household name is because he's been doing this nonstop since he's been 11 years old, and he's never stopped. It's just the endurance that's made him so wealthy, not necessarily the annual returns.
Patience. It's a difficult thing. It also reminds me of the story that you talk about in the introduction of your book about the janitor, Ronald James Reed.
Yeah.
Who, when he died in 2014, aged 92, had a net worth of over $8 million.
And he was a janitor.
How did he do that?
He took what very little money he could save from his job as a janitor, mopping floors at the gas station. He put it in stocks and he left it alone for 70 years. And that's it. That's all you need. That's all you need to do. If you have endurance in your investing and you can keep it going for years or decades, you don't need to be a genius stock picker. And not only do you not need to do it, if you have endurance, you're going to beat literally 97 or 99% of the genius stock pickers. And what's so interesting about it is like picking the right stocks is hard. It's supposed to be hard. Like, there's no world in which everybody who tries to beat the market is going to do it. Of course it's hard. Just like being an NBA player is hard. But having endurance is like largely in your control. It's so much easier to just be patient than it is to pick the right stocks every single day. And I think some people nature nurture, some people like probably Ronald Reed and my parents just understand it naturally. It's not hard for them to be patient. But there are professional investors who work 80 hours a week for 30 years to try to beat the market, and they can't do it. Not only some, that explains like most of them. And even the ones who can do it are maybe going to beat the market by 0.5% per year, 1% per year. But if you can have endurance, that's a bigger benefit than you can have by even being like a very successful stock picker. Like somebody who outperforms the market by 1 percentage point per year, and they can do that for 10 years, that's amazing. That's like Mount Rushmore investor. But somebody who earns average returns and does it for 20 years is going to have way more money. You do it for 30 years, you're going to be filthy rich.